We are 4 days away from Tennessee baseball taking the field Friday night against Texas Tech. Tony Vitello was on the Nation today, and I read the transcript of it, and I know about as much after reading it as I knew before it. But I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking going into Friday night right after this intro. Happy Monday. This is Frank Rock. This is the House of Orange Sports Channel. Thank you guys for tuning in with me. I'm going to talk a little Tennessee baseball today as we're 4 days out from the season opener against Texas Tech Friday night, 8 o'clock. From what I'm seeing, it's going to be on Flow Baseball. And I don't know if there's any other outlets that will carry it. Sometimes you can possibly get it through YouTube. So I don't know. I know a couple years ago when they did it in Texas, you could get it through the Houston Astros, like their YouTube. So I'm hoping there'll be a similar situation where we can get it through the Texas Rangers YouTube. Not sure on that right now, but as always, make sure you like this thing, share it, subscribe. As we get into baseball, a couple weeks back, I did the position previews. I did the pitchers, the catchers, the infielders, the outfielders. Thought it was some decent stuff, not going to lie. I thought it was some pretty good content. Wasn't perfect on it, of course. We're still 4 days out, and they still have not released a roster. They've not named the Friday night starter. They've not named the lineup. And like I said in the kind of little intro there, Tony Vitello was on the Nation with Chris Lowe and Jason Swain today and talked about as they come out of the weekend with the pizza series, as they called it. So where they played 3 games. And, he kind of dances. He's a funny guy. His interviews are really comical to me. They're really entertaining because he dances all over the place with it. And he did point out some guys who I'll talk about here in just a few minutes, guys who I think will be a big part of this team this year. But he made some interesting comments that I've been starting to kind of put together, thinking the same thing with it. So I said, I titled on this what I'm thinking going into Friday night. I'm still thinking Drew Beam gets the ball and pitches first Friday night. That would be my projection. I think it's him and AJ Russell, 1 and 2. In the scrimmages this past weekend on Friday night, both of these guys threw. And from what I read on it, according to Ben McKee, reading his stuff, and I don't agree with everything he says, but, he was still there, so I'm going with what he's saying. But looked like Russell was pretty dominant. 6 innings. The other night, Beam, it looked like had a little bit of a shaky outing, and he faced what doesn't look like will be the first team either. But I was looking at the 2 lineups they put together. Tennessee has some depth. They're going to have some depth. They're going to have some guys that can hit the ball a long way. Now, what kind of averages are we looking at? That kind of remains to be seen, but I'm still thinking Drew Beam. He's been here for 2 years. He's made the most starts of anybody coming back this year. I still think it's him Friday night. I'll be surprised if it isn't. I would say Drew Beam Friday night, and I'm thinking you're looking at Russell on Saturday night. And who knows on that third slot? It could be AJ Causey. It could be Nate Snead. Do they eventually go with a freshman? Because talking about Causey and Snead, Causey went a couple innings, kind of leads me to believe maybe he's a middle relief guy. Snead, same thing. Snead had a rough outing Friday night. Gave up a couple of 2-run bombs, or 3-run bombs. And Beam gave up 3 bombs as well. From what I read, he was not sharp like Russell was. But, there's a happy medium there, okay? You come up and shut down the lineup, then, that's your pitching looks good, your hitting doesn't. You come up and light up your pitching, your hitting looks good, and your pitching doesn't. So, where does it go? I know Beam did have an inning where he struck out the side in there. So I'm hoping it's a case of maybe Beam's just facing that good of a lineup. And I really think it's going to be a good lineup. But looking into that lineup from Friday night, and I'm kind of thinking, I gave my projection of how I would go with it. And I was up front saying, I don't know that Tony Vitello goes this way. And it doesn't look like he went anyway like I would. But the white team on Friday night, they did the orange and white teams. The white team had Dylan Dowling leading off. And that was when him and AJ Russell Vitello talked about who has kind of had those who are they expecting big things from? And he talked about it today. He said, you're looking from that freshman to sophomore year jump. And AJ Russell, Dylan Drawling. He said, these two guys played a lot of baseball last year, not as much as they would have liked. He was sure, but he said these two are going to play a lot of baseball and they're going to be a big deal this year. But Dowling leading off for the white team. You had Blake Burke second, Billy Amick third, Dalton Bargo fourth, Christian Moore fifth, and playing shortstop, which I thought was interesting. Hunter Inslee sixth, Kavaris Tears seventh, Cal Stark eighth, Brad Key Lowry ninth, playing second base. Based on what I'm seeing out of Cannon Peebles, they're going to have a real hard time keeping Cannon Peebles out of that lineup. And I think, again, this is what I think. I would not be surprised to see him slot in where Dalton Bargo was in this white team lineup and see Peebles hitting fourth. And it wouldn't surprise me based on what I'm seeing that Cal Stark does start behind the plate on Friday night. I don't know. They're both going to catch. But I think the difference is you're going to have a hard time keeping Peebles' bat out of that lineup. I think it's too potent of a bat. Again, good hitter coming over from North Carolina State. The only reason he's not still at North Carolina State, he was behind Cozart, who was a preseason first-team All-American in a lot of outlets. So he wanted to catch. He's not going to catch every game, and you can't catch your guy every game, or you're going to wear them out. By the end of the year, this is not the 1980s, early 1990s. You start to see that go away in the 1990s. You may have seen it more in the 80s and before, but they're just not going to wear guys out. Now, they're not going to do it catching. They're not going to do it pitching either. And Vitello made an interesting comment. He said, we got a lot of good problems. The way it talked, they're still talking about how they're wanting to go with their rotation, how they're going to set their bullpen up. And he said he really doesn't see him settling on a lineup until possibly getting up to SEC play. And you look at some of these other guys who were on the orange team. You had Ethan Payne, Reese Chapman, Robin Villeneuve. That's a guy I continue to hear about. And apparently he hit right at a 450-foot bomb Friday night. Colby Backus is another guy with a lot of power. Blake Grimmer as a freshman that I've seen they keep talking about a little bit, keeps trying to make a case for some at-bats as he's had a home run as well. That white lineup, though, Dowling, Burke, Amick, whoever hits fourth, I think Bargo will play it some, but I think it'll be a combination of Bargo. If Peebles isn't catching, you'll see him DHing. Robin Villeneuve, I think they want to get him in. Inslee, Tears. I don't expect Stark in every game. Lowry, he's in for now. How does he handle being in that lineup, getting his shot with Antigua and Curley out, guys who it looked like may have a big role at shortstop, a big say-so, and now these guys are out. So, I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns, but I think that's going to be pretty close to the lineup. Dowling in left, Burke first, Amick third. Your DH, Moore at short, Inslee short, second. Inslee at center, not second, I'm sorry. Tears right, Stark catching, Lowry at second. Now, if you move Peebles in, I totally expect Peebles to catch Saturday night. If he does it Friday night, you're going to probably be moving Villeneuve or Bargo in that lineup. And I think it'll depend on the pitcher. And I'm going to, later in the week, I'm going to try to preview this series. And I'm telling you guys right now, I'm leaning more than not towards testing out the live game Friday night after the game. So keep an eye. I'll post it on Twitter. If you follow that account, House of Orange TN, Instagram, House of Orange TN, Facebook, House of Orange TN. I post a little bit occasionally on LinkedIn or TikTok, but mainly I stick to those three platforms as well. Or you can obviously, if you're watching this channel as well. But, what's the ceiling and the floor for this team this year? He talks about liking the guys. It's a bunch of hardworking guys. I mean, the ceiling's a national championship, but there is the unknown with pitching. I'm not worried about the lineup. I'm not worried about the everyday lineup. I think, a couple of years ago when they lost so many guys, people were like, well, they got a lot to replace. And it ended up being the most potent lineup in school history. Lost a lot of guys last year, still had a good lineup last year. Wasn't as good as the year before, but I really think 1 through 9, this is going to be a strong lineup. They added some damn good hitters in this lineup, and Billy Amick, who's going to be a stud, and Cannon Peebles, who's going to be a stud as well. And that's not to take away from Dalton Bargo. I think that was a real good pickup. But, this team, it's Sealand's national championship. Tony Vitello is going into year 7. He's built a powerhouse. The question is going to be the pitching. There was an article, there was a guy, and I commented on it. I was curious of the article. He wrote it, called it Rocky Flop. I wanted to see his reasoning, and he just said because they lost Chase Burns and Chase Dolander. Chase Dolander wasn't that good last year, and Chase Burns got moved to the bullpen for a reason. It was lazy and bland writing. I commented on it in his post. I commented on it again. Now, it was lazy and bland. There was nothing about Beam. There was nothing about A.J. Russell stepping up. There was nothing about anybody who come over. A Nate Snead and A.J. Causey, a Chris Stamos, who Tony Vitello talked about him coming from Cal and how he's fit in seamlessly. A lot of guys coming back. That freshman to sophomore jump. Some of these freshmen that they've thought a lot of, Matthew Dallas possibly. Where do these guys fit in? What happens in weekend 1? That's, like Vitello said, this thing may not be settled till you get in SEC play. So that's your ceiling, your floor. I mean, it's obviously tournament, but going out, not making it out of the regional. That's the floor for this team. And, I think they'll have a good chance of it, a good chance to be a host this year. And, if Russell is as dominant as he can be, what's Drew Beam do? I still think there's a little bit of a question on Drew Beam. He had a high ERA, gave up a lot of home runs last year. Does he bring that back down? Is he more of the freshman Drew Beam? Is he more of the sophomore Drew Beam? Or is it more of a median and in between? And then who's going to take that Sunday spot? I still say I'm high on Nate Snead. If this dude's throwing 99, 101, they'll get it figured out with him. It may take a little bit of time, but you saw what they did with Chase Burns. They figured it out middle of the year last year. They'll figure it out with Nate Snead. You don't have a lot of idiots. Frank Anderson's not an idiot. He's going to figure it out. But, I'll give you what I think, and hopefully we'll know a little bit more, but going to bring more baseball throughout the week. Again, I'm leaning heavily towards Friday night going live. But I do reserve the right to change my mind on that as well. Basketball preview coming tomorrow night for Arkansas. I'll drop that tomorrow night as well. And just more content. Be on the lookout. Make sure you like this thing, share it, subscribe to this channel. Covering all 3 sports. There's going to be plenty of it coming at you. And this thing's just taking off, guys. Thank you. Thank you for all you do to support this channel. My name's Frank Rock, House of Orange Sports Channel. Happy Monday. And as always, go Vols.